tell you that I will be your mentor in genetics if you enroll in our course. I will be your mentor in biostatistics and microbiology. Okay, the three boring subjects is given to me. Okay, so for our next topic, how do you crack the code? This is an overview of the four major genetic disorder. So this is not a complete discussion, but this is based on the genetic problem of these four key syndromes. So, and what is the four key syndromes? So this is your tuberous sclerosis, your cystic fibrosis, your sickle cell anemia, and your thalassemia. So we break it down into two, okay? A systemic multi-organ disease, which includes your tuberous sclerosis and your cystic fibrosis and your hemoglobinopathies, sorry, your sickle cell anemia and your thalassemia. Okay, so let's first go with your tuberous sclerosis. Okay, so tuberous sclerosis, remember when you say genetics, we're talking about the problem with the genes that causing this mutation. Okay, so tuberous sclerosis, or what we call TSC, is a rare multi-system genetic disease characterized by growth of benign tumors, and this is caused by mutation in one of two genes whose protein products are hamartin and tuberin. So to make it more simple, okay, so this is the normal function, okay? You have here chromosome 9, which codes for hamartin, and chromosome 16, which codes for tuberin. Okay, so this is your TSC1 and TSC2. So what does this hamartin and tuberin do? They suppress tumor growth. So if it is on, okay, they suppress tumor growth. So what happens in mutated state? So wait. So what happened during the mutated state? So in chromosome 9 and 16, the mutated TSC1 or tuberous sclerosis 1 and tuberous sclerosis 2, it will produce a defective protein, defective hamartin and tuberin. So what will happen is the growth suppression is off. So these are your tumor suppressor genes, guys. So when your growth suppression is off, what happened? So there will be production of a lot of tumors, and production of a lot of tumors will be happening in the whole body. Okay, so remember that in the whole body, not only in one part of your body. So what are the clinical features of your tuberous sclerosis? 90% the presentation is neurological. So you will have small tumors, the patient will have small tumors in the brain, okay? And when, imagine if you have small tumors in the brain, you will have epilepsy, learning difficulties, okay? And they will have subependymal nodules or cortical tumors. There will be tumors also in the face, okay? We call this angiofibromas. It will follow a butterfly distribution across the nose and cheeks. There will be ash leaf spots, okay? These are hypopigmented macules. There will be chagrin patches. What are chagrin patches? Chagrin patches are leathery skin patches at the lower back. You know leather, right? So that means it is like a little rough, okay? In the kidneys, there will be angiomyolipomas. And in the heart, there will be rhabdomyosarcoma. So imagine, if you have all these tumors in your brain, you cannot function normally. You will be in constant pain. You'll have epilepsy. You will have problem in the heart. You can have a heart attack, problem in the kidneys. So, what is the most difficult thing is when your doctor tells you that tuberous sclerosis is incurable. So that means there's nothing you can do about it. You will have to have it for life. But it is highly manageable through coordinated care. So it needs multidisciplinary team, okay? Monitoring of the tumor growth, targeted therapy, okay? And of course, these are the required specialties. So the neurological management for seizure control is step by step, okay? During childhood, it will start with several spasms or infantile spasms that can be treated by your vigabatrin. This is the first line intervention. Second, if the epilepsy is refractory, the patient can be put on a ketogenic diet. Okay, so ketogenic, so remember guys, it is not just a diet fad. Okay, actually, ketogenic diet can cure the epilepsy. So if you know your friend or you have somebody in the family who have epilepsy, okay, you can advise her to go on a ketogenic diet. Why? Because the ketones that is produced makes the brain activity less, okay? Makes the brain less excitable. So if the brain is less excitable, then there will be less seizure event. If the seizure is uncontrolled and it is not working on a ketogenic diet, then the next step is your vagus nerve stimulation. And the last step is surgical intervention. That means remove, okay, all the this seizure focus. But this is only indicated if there's a single focus that is identified. If there are a lot of tumors in the brain, so how can you resect everything? You'll damage the brain. So if there's only a single seizure focus that is identified, then you can remove. So in between a ketogenic diet and the surgical intervention, that's when we do the vagus nerve stimulation. Okay? So the first line of protocol is your everolimus or your sirolimus. This is your the one that inhibits the tumor growth, okay, through the mTOR pathway. So the medication shrink the tumors, okay. However, if it is ineffective, then you can do surgical intervention, okay. So for the kidneys, it's still the same. To shrink the tumors, you have to give her everolimus, okay? And if there's a high bleeding risk in the kidney, then you can have selective embolization, and the last resort is always surgery, okay? For the other skin conditions, lungs, heart, okay? So for the skin, you can have the same medication, but on the topical side, and you can have laser therapy for cosmetic improvement. The lungs, lipoangioma mata in the lungs is treated with the same sirolimus. Okay, sirolimus and everolimus are the same. Okay, one is fast acting, which is your everolimus. That's why it's preferred for neurological problems, and sirolimus is a little bit slow acting. That's why it's recommended for the other skin lesions and the lungs. For the heart rhabdomyomas, you have to watch and wait. Usually it regress on their own, okay? You treat only if it is causing obstruction or arrhythmia, okay? Also for the eyes, okay, it is being observed, no treatment unless the vision is threatened, okay? And of course, not only for the physical problem that it is doing to the patient, of course, if there are a lot of tumors in the brain, there will be learning and behavior development difficulties. Okay, so what we'll have to do with this is to refer the patient for supportive therapies. So we have to have behavioral and developmental support, physical, occupational, and therapy for speech delays, and psychological support. Okay, so this is a lifelong surveillance protocol. So in childhood, you have to have a brain MRI every 1 to 3 years. You have to have kidney imaging also 1 to 3 years. So this is a very, very difficult problem. Okay, it is not. I think it's not just not. We always think that cancer is the worst disease that anyone could have. Okay, but sometimes even non-terminal illness are, worse because you deal with it for the rest of your life. So kidney imaging every 1 to 3 years, okay, and systemic exam recommended at interval based on age and symptoms. Okay, so now let's go to second the genetic syndrome or second genetic problem, which is your cystic fibrosis, guys. And cystic fibrosis is a very, very favorite exam question by the Royal College. Okay, so last exam, it was asked, what is the chromosome that is affected by the CFTR gene? So your CFTR gene is located in chromosome 7. So this is an outright exam question. Also, you will encounter in some questions that it mentioned that the rate of cystic fibrosis in Caucasian is 1 in 25. Okay, cystic fibrosis is an autosomal recessive disease. Remember, guys, when it is recessive, that means you need 2 copies of the genes in order for it to manifest. Okay, so in order for it to manifest, you have to have the father and the mother should be carrier. If only one is carrying the defective copy, it will not manifest, and the patient will be, the siblings or the offsprings will be 50% normal and 50% carrier. Okay, so the transmembrane conductance regulator gene, again, guys, CFTR, is located on chromosome 7, and it is responsible for the anion transport across the membrane. So what does CFTR genes do? Okay, so CFTR, if there is problem with your CFTR genes, there is problem with the channel, the chloride channel. So a defective CFTR protein impairs the normal movement of chloride ions. Okay, so the chloride can enter the cell, but it cannot go out. Okay, and you know that chloride pairs with sodium. Okay, so when chloride is trapped inside, okay, the sodium is also trapped inside. So what happens? The mucus outside the cell becomes sticky and dehydrated because it is less water. Okay, there will be less water. So the sticky mucus will block the ducts and airways of this mucus secreting organ. So what happens is all all parts of your body that is mucus producing will be affected. So in the lungs, okay, you will have recurrent chest infections. So if there is thick mucus in the lungs, there will be poor alveolar gas exchange. In the intestine, okay, there will be problem with your pancreas. Okay, there will be, because the pancreas will be producing this enzyme. Okay, that is affected by your cystic fibrosis. So you will have fatty, okay, fatty discharge in the pancreas. So there will be malabsorption. Okay, and another favorite exam question is, what is the cause of the infertility in males with cystic fibrosis? Is the absence, congenital absence of your vas deferens. So this is always a favorite exam question. Okay, congenital absence of your vas deferens is the infertility problems in males with cystic fibrosis. So how you treat, how you diagnose? The diagnosis of cystic fibrosis is your sweat test. Okay, so this measures the chloride content of your sweat. And the sweat tends to be more salty because, as I've mentioned to you, the sodium goes with chloride. If chloride cannot get out of the cell, the sodium also cannot get out of the cell. So the sweat test is measuring the chloride content, not the sodium content, okay? But the sweat tends to be more salty because it is because of the sodium. Okay, so if it is 60 millimoles per liter, that means cystic fibrosis is likely. If it is less than 29, then that is unlikely. Okay, so what are the treatment? So for pulmonary recurrent chest infections, airway clearance, chest physiotherapy, postular drainage, and breathing exercises. For gastrointestinal, antibiotics, bronchodilators, you can also have for your pulmonary. Okay, and nutritional support for pancreatic enzymes and nutritional vitamins A, D, E, K. Okay. So as I've mentioned, this was the same as the previous slide. Okay. Prophylactic antibiotic and high calorie. So pancreatic enzyme, you give Creon. Okay. It's just like pancreatic enzyme. Okay. You give it Creon so that the absorption increases the absorption, because what happens is that there's a problem with the pancreatic production of the pancreatic enzyme that's causing malabsorption. Okay, so now let's go to the last two syndromes. We have your hemoglobinopathies, your sickle cell disease, and your thalassemia. When we talk of sickle cell disease, we are talking more of qualitative, okay, or structural defect. And when we talk of thalassemia, this is more of quantitative. Okay, so the mechanism, guys, close your microphones, please. Thank you. So the mechanism for your sickle cell disease, it is a structural defect. So remember, the hemoglobin has wrong shape. Okay. So what happens when the hemoglobin, the shape of the hemoglobin is wrong? It will carry less oxygen, right? So let's go first with your sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia is a point mutation. Okay. There's only one change in the globin chain, one letter or one protein, okay, which is your adenine, is replaced by your thymine. So instead of producing glutamic acid, which is hydrophilic, it was replaced by valine, which is hydrophobic. Okay? So this is what happens. So the valine substitution causes sickling. Okay, so the shape should be like this. And the normal lifespan of your RBC is 120 days. So if it becomes like a sickle shape, it will have low oxygen content. So imagine if the RBC carries low oxygen, so it will compromise the tissues, right? So the lifespan of this is 10 to 20 days only. So what are the clinical manifestations that are driven by this vasoocclusion and hemolytic anemia? The sickle cell crisis, the most common, is a vaso-occlusive crisis. This is the most common type, which is causing severe pain. Okay, so the disease is characterized by recurrent painful episodes, which you call a sickle cell crisis. Okay, the patient can have acute chest syndrome. When you say acute chest syndrome, there will be fever, chest pain, pulmonary infiltrates on chest radiograph, and aplastic crisis in patients with sickle cell is often triggered by parvovirus B19 infection. And I also discussed this in the microbiology portion of the course. Okay? And splenic sequestration crisis. So what is important here is the presence of your Howell-Jolly bodies. When you look at the microscope, the technique also in microbiology is to remember which are the pathognomonic of a certain lesion. So for example, sickle cell anemia, so the pathognomonic microscopic lesion is the presence of your Howell-Jolly bodies, which represents hyposplenism. Okay, so the treatment, as I've mentioned, first, management is focused on preventive and acute care. We have to inhibit sickling by giving cytostatics and hydroxyurea. So hydroxyurea, it prevents the hemoglobin from um, um, having this sickle shape. Okay, and then you have to prevent infection by putting the patient on prophylaxis penicillin. Manage anemia by transfusion and exchange transfusion, and if everything else fails, then you can have bone marrow transplant. Okay, so next we have your thalassemia. Okay, we will entertain questions at the end of the session if you have any. So thalassemia is again, as I've mentioned to you, in contrast to your sickle cell, the sickle cell is structural defect. The thalassemia is quantitative defect. So we have two types of thalassemia. You have your, because in your hemoglobin, you have your alpha chain and your beta chain. So if the alpha chain is affected, then that is alpha thalassemia. If the beta chain is affected, then that is your beta thalassemia. Okay, so we have four types of alpha thalassemia, and it depends on the severity that correlates directly with the number of deleted genes. So there are four chains, or four alpha chains. Okay, so if one is deleted, this is a silent carrier, usually clinically normal. Okay, if two genes are affected, this is your thalassemia trait, and the patient will present with mild hypochromic anemia. If three genes are affected, this is your hemoglobin H disease, leading to moderate anemia. And if you have four alpha chains affected, this is what you call your hydrops fetalis, which is fatal in utero. Okay, because this is due to the formation of hemoglobin BARTs instead of hemoglobin F. Okay, and hemoglobin BART is extremely highly affiliated with oxygen. So that means if these hemoglobin BARTs attach too much to the oxygen, so the hemoglobin will fail to deliver oxygen to the tissues. So there will be necrosis. Okay, so that's why this is not compatible with life. Okay, now for beta thalassemia, this includes the beta chain, and we have three classifications, unlike your alpha thalassemia. So your intermediate, your minor, and your major. Okay, the symptoms begin around 6 months of age, because this is where the fetal hemoglobin is replaced by the adult hemoglobin, and it includes fatigue, severe anemia, jaundice. So that means before 6 months of age, the baby will not feel anything. The baby will not manifest anything. So usually when a patient has beta thalassemia, it will manifest after 6 months of age. Okay? So the treatment for beta thalassemia major is regular blood transfusion, chelation therapy, folic acid supplementation, splenectomy. This is the last resort, bone marrow and cord blood transplantation. Okay, so again, just to emphasize, these are the type of thalassemia. Okay, when you say thalassemia major, the patient cannot survive without transfusion. So this is severe transfusion dependent. Okay, beta thalassemia. And a patient with beta thalassemia major will have chipmunk spasms and bossing of the cheeks. Okay? So treatment, again, regular blood transfusion to maintain the hemoglobin levels for growth and oxygenation. If there is iron overload or what you call hemosiderosis, okay, what we do is chelation therapy or using the drug desferrioxamine because it binds and removes excess iron to prevent organ damage. Okay, other treatment is splenectomy, bone marrow transplantation, and folic acid supplementation. So this is the summary. So for cystic fibrosis, you have your CFTR gene, chromosome 7. Sickle cell disease, this is a point mutation replacing glutamine to valine. Okay. Alpha thalassemia, deletion of alpha chain, whether it is 1, 2, 3, or 4. Beta thalassemia major is defect on your beta chain, and your tuberous sclerosis, TSC1 and TSC2 on your chromosome 9 and 16. Okay, the diagnosis is this, and this is the clinical pearl. Okay, so guys, that's the end of our session. Okay, if you have any questions regarding the eligibility deadline or any question about the syndromes, you are feel free, or any question that you want to ask, you are feel free to ask now. And if you want to join our courses, regular course is already starting. Okay, but don't worry because we already have finished two topics, anatomy and, if I'm not mistaken, physiology. But you can still be provided with the recording. You still have 5 months, okay, for you to join us. Okay. Any questions, guys? No questions? Okay, if you want to go back to the lesson, to the session, it will be uploaded in our YouTube channel. So you can go back to the genetic part of this session. Okay, if you miss something about eligibility, you can also go back to this webinar. And I thank you for sharing with me your time. Wait, I have chat. You're welcome, Dr. Maurice. This is just the sample of how we conduct our live session, guys. We always, sometimes me, before I end every session, I always, I always tell my student what to do, not to do. You're welcome, Dr. Christine. Okay, guys, so let's call it a day. Happy weekend, everyone. And I hope you join us in our course. Okay? Bye. Bye, guys. Thank you.